Hey guys, welcome back to the Lila Rose podcast. We're also doing this as a YouTube live. So if you're on YouTube, I will be checking out the chat throughout the episode. Hey everybody. Hey Nate. Hey Ninu. Hey John Henry. Thanks for joining, guys. If you are listening on podcast app, make sure you're also subscribed on the YouTube channel and vice versa. If you're watching on YouTube right now and you do listen to podcasts via podcast app, Spotify or Apple, sometimes that's more convenient, please go and subscribe to the show over there. We want to make sure that people can get this show regardless of where they're listening to it. And as you know, sometimes with YouTube, with the algorithm, they will not put the video in your feed, even if you're subscribed. They might even censor it sometimes. That's been a problem with some other creators. So make sure that you are subscribed on podcast app so that you get access to the show wherever you're listening. All right, we've got a rundown of a lot of things to cover today. And I want to start with the breaking news of this week about Dallas Megachurch Gateway Church pastor stepping down after accusations coming forward that he was abusing a child, a 12-year-old, earlier in his ministry. We're also going to get into the Los Angeles School District, so right in my neck of the woods, which is actively banning smartphones in the classroom. And this is in the wake of the Surgeon General warning that these are actually harmful to the mental health of youth. So we're going to talk about that, and I'll give my take on that. We're also going to talk about the Department of Justice, which is still going after pro-lifers. This is so important that we keep talking about this, that it stays in the news. Also, Louisiana is mandating the 10 commandments to be put in classrooms. I'll give my take on that. And finally, Celtic NBA winner, the coach Mazzulla, has some very great things to say in response to media. And he's been doing this for years. By the way, if you follow NBA and Coach Mazzulla, I, to be honest, not some personal big fan, but I do really like this coach and the things that he has been saying. He has some great takes and you're going to like them too. So we're going to listen to that. I'll also keep my eye on the chat. So if you have any comments or questions, I will be taking a look at the chat throughout the episode and would love to hear from you guys. So please put your thoughts in there. All right. So before we jump into Megachurch Gateway Church in Dallas, I want to give a huge shout out to our sponsor, We Heart Nutrition. This is a new sponsor for the show, so I'm really grateful to them because I love finding companies that are aligned with the values of this podcast, but also are making best-in-class products that are going to serve you and your family. And I love that about WeHeartNutrition.com. So WeHeartNutrition.com is a vitamin company that designs vitamin packages, particularly for women in all their different stages of life. I think they're going to be expanding in the future beyond that, but right now they're phenomenal in creating amazing packages for women. This is a family-owned company, a family-owned business, so it's a pro-life family with 4 young kids, so I love that. All of their vitamins are sourced in the United States, so this is a USA-made product and company, which I also love, supporting our USA companies and creators, and these are highest quality research-backed ingredients that are created to be absorbed by your body. So this is a best-in-class vitamin company that is creating amazing products that are research-backed and highest in quality ingredients that are best to be absorbed by your body. I also like about Reheart Nutrition, I love about Reheart Nutrition that they are donating 10% of their money back to the pro-life movement. So this is such a wonderful thing, but they are a company that's not just dedicated to your health, but to supporting the health of babies and moms in need. And that's why they're giving 10% of their money back to the pro-life movement. So if you take vitamins on a regular basis, this is your company. It's WeHeartNutrition.com. And if you use the code Lila at checkout, you'll get 10% off. You'll get 20% off. You'll get 20% off your first order. So that's code Lila at checkout at WeHeartNutrition.com. You get 20% off your first order. Go check them out. Show them some love. Okay, so I saw this come across on Twitter recently and in my newsfeed. It's really a tragic story on multiple levels. But there's a mega church in Dallas. Some of you may have heard of it, called Gateway Church. And they have, for years, apparently covered up the abuse of one of their lead pastors, Pastor Robert Morris. So Pastor Robert Morris, when he was much younger in ministry, he was abusive sexually of a 12-year-old child, a 12-year-old girl. This was apparently covered up for decades. He's now in his 50s, covered up for decades by different members and leadership in the church. Even the girl's family was aware of this abuse or made aware of this abuse. And there was, largely speaking, cover up of the abuse. And he went on to become this senior pastor. He would give sermons to up to 100,000 people. I mean, this is a mega church, right? And now the allegations are coming public that this young woman at the time, now an older woman, is saying he abused me starting at 12 years old. Now, this is a very tragic story on many levels. It's tragic on the level fundamentally of abuse, that there was an older man who was sexually abusing a child. This is not a problem that is just systemic or endemic to the evangelical world. This is happening in the Catholic Church and has happened in the Catholic Church. It's happening in our public school system. It's happening throughout the country. There's some scary statistics that up to 1 out of every 4 young girls experience some sort of sexual abuse. I mean, absolutely horrific. But what's doubly tragic about this story is that there was cover-up. So there wasn't just abuse, there was cover-up. And you guys know I'm passionate about this from my work investigating abortion clinics that cover up sexual abuse, and that has happened for decades now. It's still happening at groups like Planned Parenthood. They cover up the sexual abuse of minors, and they give secret abortions when this young girl is being abused by sometimes even a father or a relative or some older person. In this situation, it's the church. It's a community of people who call themselves Christians. And again, this is not just Protestant world. This happens, as you know, horrifically has happened in the Catholic world. It's one thing to commit abuse. It's another thing when the structure around you enables that abuse. And that's what's happened here, because apparently elders and other people in ministry knew about the abuse, never reported it. And there was instead internal reparations that were done, supposedly, where, a sorry was said. I'm sorry was said. And I think there were 2 years taken off of ministry. So there was like this, I'll step away from ministry before I get back into it. But here's the problem. First of all, you got to abide by the law. And thankfully, our law still penalizes sexual abuse as it should. And if someone is abusing a 12-year-old and they're 21, he was 21 at the time, that age gap puts that 21-year-old, it's a position of power that he's in, and that abuse is unlawful. It's against the law, thankfully. That's a good thing that the law prohibits this. So in this case, tragically, that cover-up happened. There was never accountability to the law. There was never accountability about not allowing this person to continue in leadership and in ministry, and they gave him kind of a timeout, and then they let Pastor Robert Morris back into business. Listen, I believe in second chances. I believe in forgiveness. And our faith is all about Jesus Christ's mercy and forgiveness. But when it comes to our institutions and when it comes to protecting children, we should not be giving the abusers of children second chances and putting them back around children. It cannot work. That's why we have a sex offender list, right? That we put people on when they abuse children so that they cannot have a job at a daycare or they cannot be hanging out around a schoolyard, right? That's a good thing. We do not take child sexual abuse seriously enough in this country. We do not take adolescent sexual abuse seriously enough in this country. And that is why it's particularly all the more scandalous and tragic when churches, whether it's a Catholic church or an evangelical church in this case, does not take child sexual abuse seriously enough. We know what the Christian teaching is. It's better that you have a millstone put around your neck and you're thrown into the sea than you harm one of these little ones. Jesus is all about protecting children. It's better that you die, basically, than you harm a child, is what Jesus is saying. We need to have that spirit of fierce protectiveness infuse the church. The church should take child abuse more seriously than the secular world even. But unfortunately, in many cases, it doesn't. Why is that? I mean, this could be a whole other episode that I could do, exploring why we've failed to do this, like Gateway Church failed, and many Catholic dioceses failed, especially in the 90s in the 80s with the sexual abuse scandals in the Catholic Church that rocked that church. But I think for today, what I want to say is this is good. It's good that this story is coming out. It's good that it's blowing up. It's good that the truth is being told, and it's good that this pastor is going to be stepping down permanently, because it's unacceptable that we have people in leadership who have a history of molesting children. It just cannot be acceptable. Do I believe that there's no future for a person who is committed sexual abuse? I think that there's a future for them in terms of they can change their life and how they live, but there has to be accountability. And it should include jail time. And for abusers, I think they can't be rehabilitated into society to then be associating with young children again. We have to draw that bright line. So that's my take on that. Very tragic news there, but we got to take sexual abuse in the church even more seriously than the secular world treats sexual abuse, because children are valuable. they have dignity, and they deserve fierce protection from adults. That is our responsibility, and a sacred responsibility that we have as Christians and Catholics. Okay, next story here is the Los Angeles School District is actually doing something that I kind of like. I have some mixed feelings about it. I want to get into this. So as you may have seen lately, there's a lot of news stories coming out about the harm of social media on especially young people. There is actually a mental health crisis today that is hitting young people. They're increasingly anxious, increasingly depressed, increasingly prone to suicide. Jonathan Haidt just came out with a great book called The Anxious Generation, about how since smartphones and social media have entered the equation, young people's health is tanking. Their mental health is tanking. So there's other societal factors, I think, going on too, but mental health is definitely connected to social media usage for a lot of young people. So there's a new trend among especially Gen Zers and millennials to use flip phones. I don't know if you've seen this, but apparently over the last year, there's been a 15,000% increase among Gen Z and millennials in searching online for flip phones. We want flip phones now. We do not want smartphones anymore because smartphones are killing our brains. I'm on social media for work and for the cause, but I do not enjoy social media. It's rare that I meet someone who really enjoys it. There's aspects that I enjoy, but overall, I think is a net negative on society. If I could click a button and erase all social media so that the playing field was equaled, right? So right now I'm on YouTube because there's other people on YouTube, other people on podcasts sharing their ideas. I want to get our ideas out there, right? But if the playing field was equal again and we didn't have social media anymore, I think that overall, would we be healthier? I might venture to say, yeah. And so there's a new trend to throw away your smartphone, or at least to leave it at home and use your flip phone. I want to check out this TikTok video that I loved that I saw recently. So this is a girl. This has over 17 million views now on TikTok. And it's a young woman talking about what she does with her smartphone.
Why my friends and I only take our flip phones out. We don't take our regular phones out anymore because I was like the paparazzi, because we realize that every single problem that we have on a night out, everything that leads to us crying, everything that leads to us having a bad hookup, everything that leads to us having a bad time stems from our phone while we're out. One of our friends doesn't get on her phone at all when she's out, and she has a wonderful time every single time. She's always in the present moment. She always finds people, finds friends when she's out. It's just so much better of an experience. So we were like, wait, this eliminates accidental drunk posts, eliminates drunk texts, eliminates bad hookups. It eliminates all of the bad things about college and brings all of the good things about a phone, which is connecting with people and taking photos and videos. The photos and videos on this are fire. And
we can pause. Okay, so she's got a flip phone. She can still text and call, and apparently she can still take videos and take photos with it. And they're fire, she's saying. But she's not using the smartphone. Her friends are not using smartphones to do the bad stuff, drunk texting or drunk posting or hooking up or just not being in the present moment. I love that she even used that phrase, being in the present moment, which is so hard to do with your smartphone. So I love this trend that's happening. I mean, it's in response, again, the Surgeon General has been recommending a label on social media for teenagers, a warning label, like a black label, like they put on cigarettes saying this is harmful to your health. They want to do that for social media for teens. I can understand why. The reality is what we do in our culture for teens on so many levels is unhealthy, but I think social media is a driving factor. Okay, what is Los Angeles School District doing about this? They're actually doing something pretty radical and aggressive. This is the second largest school district in the country. Before that, though, I just want to thank our other sponsor today, which is Good Ranchers. You guys have heard me talk about Good Ranchers before in the show. They're a huge friend of the show. Good Ranchers is America's meat delivered. This is sourcing your meat, your poultry, your pork, your meat products in the United States with American ranchers to support them. You might not know this, but 90% of the meat that you get in the grocery store is actually not from the United States. It might say product of the USA, but it's not imported. It's imported from elsewhere, and then it just put the label on it. So you can support your local ranchers by being a Good Ranchers customer. I love goodranchers.com too because their meat is delicious. We've ordered their pork, we've ordered their chicken, we've ordered their meat. I especially love their chicken, by the way. It is tender and juicy and delicious. It's not stringy and dry like a lot of chicken that you're going to find in the grocery store. So big shout out to their chicken. They have a special deal to celebrate the 4th of July and will give you $100 worth of free bratwurst plus free shipping to celebrate our nation's independence. So you can go check that out at goodranchers.com today. You can use the code Lila at checkout to get $100 off of free bratwurst with your package of meat and chicken. You can do that with the code Lila at checkout and plus get your free 2-day shipping. And that's goodranchers.com, American meat delivered. Go check them out. All right, so this is in my neck of the woods. You guys know I'm in Southern California, and the Los Angeles Unified School District has banned cell phones. This is pretty dramatic of a move. This is the second largest school district in the country, and they voted to ban cell phones and social media use for over 400,000 K through 12 students during the school day. Obviously, they can't ban it when the kid's at home. But this was passed by the district board by a vote of 5-2. So I have a couple thoughts about this. First of all, I think that the idea of less smartphone usage among teenagers overall is good. The numbers are scary. As I was saying earlier, mental health is tanking among youth, and for many of them, it's correlated or connected to social media usage. But it is crazy how much time young people are even using and spending on their phones. Some of them are saying that the average person is spending 5 hours a day on their smartphone. For the young person, that can be 6-7+ hours of a day on their smartphone. We're no longer interacting in real life. We're just interacting on the phone, especially for younger people. It's so tempting and addictive. And it's also so isolating and can be so harmful. So I love this move by the school district to say, no, the phone does not belong in the classroom. We're here to learn. Now, do I like what these LA schools, what these classrooms in Los Angeles are teaching public school students? No. Do I think the quality of education is so high? No. Do I think there's a lot of problems there? Yes. Am I upset about ideologies being pushed into classrooms? Yes. Do I also have a concern that if there's no smartphones in the classroom, if there's something bad happening on campus or in the classroom, that the student can't film it and report on it, right? There's all these videos of students filming things that are happening to their friends or to them. I mean, these are fights where there's not enough action being taken to protect against bullies or agendas that are being pushed in the schoolroom. And so there's a video taken. I mean, there's a certain level of accountability that's comforting there that at least the student can document it. But do I want to live in such a low trust society that we need a smartphone to just turn it on and capture our neighbor doing something bad to be able to prove it happened or to stop it from happening in the future? That's not a good society. That's not a high trust society that we should be living in. So on net, I think that it's a good thing to say we're a schoolroom, we're not going to permit a smartphone in here. You can have a flip phone. And if you really want your smartphone, you can pick it up after school. You can still make an emergency call on your flip phone if you really need to. And you could technically get a flip phone that can take videos and, take pictures if needed. So I think on net, this is a good move. And surprisingly, Gavin Newsom, who is the governor of California and somebody that I've talked about before in the show, and he is radically pro-abortion. He was extremely hypocritical during COVID. He was whining and dining while he was shutting down people's businesses and shutting down people's churches. He let the abortion clinics stay open while he shut down churches during COVID. I mean, very corrupt governor, very pro-abortion, very radical. When he was the mayor of San Francisco, he was the one who illegally was performing or permitting to be performed gay weddings in the city. He was trying to say this is the place for gay weddings. He's very much opposed to the values of life and family. But on this one thing, I think he has the right idea. By the way, pray for Gavin Newsom's conversion on all things. I've heard rumors that his kids are more conservative than he is. But on this one thing, he's saying, yes, I would want to severely restrict the use of smartphones during the school day and potentially ban them in all California public schools. This would not necessarily be a bad thing, guys. So really interesting stuff happening on the front of the research coming out about smartphones and social media, and people waking up to the fact that this is harmful to kids and adults for that matter, and that we should do something about it. And I actually on net think this is a good thing. All right, so you guys those that follow the NBA know that the coach Mazzulla of the Celtics, he came out recently and had some very viral moments in media. I want to take a look at this. Congratulations to Coach Mazzulla for winning the NBA championship, first of all. This is a very beloved and, he's got a great personality coach. And let's start before the latest viral video. Let's just go back in time. This is a video just so you get to know who is Coach Mazzulla. This is a little bit of a primer on who this guy is. Let's start with that.
Did you get a chance to meet with the royal family? And if not, how was it like having them there in the building?
Jesus, Mary, and Joseph?
The Prince and Princess of Wales.
Oh, no, I did not. I'm only familiar with one royal family. I don't know too much about that one. Thank you.
I'm sorry. I love that. Okay, so this is Coach Mazzulla, who is Coach Joe Mazzulla, the Celtics coach. They just won the NBA championship. This was from last year, I think. Yeah, it was a little over last year. Anyways, he's being asked by a reporter, did you meet the royal family when you were in, the United Kingdom? And he said, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. And they're like, no, Prince and Princess, whatever. And he's like, no, I don't care. I would just want to meet the real royal family, which is Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. I love it. And it's true, right? Who is the most royal of all the families? It's Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. I love the idea of Jesus, Mary, and Joseph having more of a cultural presence in American society and beyond. And that's what he did right there. He just brought them into the equation and said, they are my royal family and I'd love to meet them. I mean, you can meet them, which is amazing spiritually. And I believe as a Catholic, you can meet Jesus in the Eucharist physically in this amazing way. But I love it. It's so fun. And that's who we're dealing with Joe Mazzulla. So let's go look at his latest clip after he and his team just won the NBA championship. I'll turn this up so you guys can hear it. You guys listening over on podcast app later.
Hey Joe, Ben School at Yahoo Sports. For the first time since 1975, this is the NBA Finals where you have two black head coaches. Given the plight sometimes of black head coaches in the NBA, do you think this is a significant moment? Do you take pride in this? How do you view this, or do you not see it at all?
I wonder how many of those have been Christian coaches. David Aldridge?
Okay, so the guy's got some great one-liners. So they're asking him, okay, you're black basically, so there's not a lot of black coaches, or there should be more that make it, and you made it. And so what do you think about that? And he's like, are we Christian? Like, what's the most important thing about me? I think what he's communicating, not the color of my skin, but am I walking with God? Do I profess faith? That's what's most important. And I love that. What a great example. Because I think sometimes there's a hesitation to bring our faith into the secular space, right? And a lot of people struggle with how to do this, but our faith belongs everywhere. The faith belongs everywhere. Of course, we do it with love and we don't want to hit people over the head with it, but he's doing it, very casually here, but he's bringing the faith into the narrative that the media is trying to push to say, what's most important about me is not my skin color, but it is my faith and what I care about, my values. And I love that he did that so confidently. And yeah, they were silent afterwards. The reporter didn't even know what to say in response to that, because it's such a true point. What is most important about a person? Where they want to go, where they're headed, what they believe. This man believes in Christ and faith, and he wants to be headed to heaven. He's setting that example. And I think that it's a great one that we can all learn from. So yeah, I mean, many of us, I think, maybe wrestle with, do I talk about my faith in public? How do I share my faith in public? But I would encourage, do it naturally. Again, you don't want to push faith on anyone, but be willing to speak about your values and your faith. Be willing to share that with other people. Do it with joy. Do it with kindness. Be willing to listen before you speak. Of course, all of these things are good, but be like Coach Joe here, who is proud of his faith and is showing people that the most important thing about him is what he believes and who he serves, not his skin color or even his talent. It's who he loves and serves, and that's God. Love that. Congratulations again to the Celtics for their win. That's very exciting. I will admit I'm not some big NBA fan, so I'm not going to pretend like I watched the game, but it's still awesome, the clip, and I think it's very fun that the Coach Joe is out there giving these zingers in media interviews. All right. Next story here. This is a tough one, guys. The Department of Justice. You probably have seen this story, but I need to give an important update for you. Department of Justice has been going after pro-lifers since Joe Biden took power. It's terrible. Since President Biden became president, the Department of Justice has become weaponized against pro-lifers. President Biden is the most pro-abortion president in American history. He's radical. He maybe not personally is radical, but he's surrounded himself by radical people who are rabidly pro-abortion, like his VP, Kamala Harris, and his Department of Justice is going after those that are daring to peacefully protest at abortion clinics. And so if you actually look at what's happening, let's get into the details here, it's very apparent that this political persecution, which has been happening now since Biden took power, is reaching a new intensity. So just a few weeks ago, an elderly pro-life activist named Paulette Harlow, who has a debilitating medical condition. This woman is so sweet. I haven't met her personally, but I know people that know her. She's the sweetest woman. She's full of love. She's been doing pro-life work peacefully. She was praying the rosary peacefully and quietly in an abortion clinic. She had chained herself and others, rescuers, to the clinic to create peaceful disturbance so that abortions would be stopped that day. But it was completely peaceful, prayerful, and she was there practicing her right to put herself in that position. Obviously, there can be penalties for people that put themselves in that level of activism, but she went there peacefully with love. And now she has been sentenced to 24 months in jail. Originally, they had permitted her to do house arrest because she has this debilitating medical condition, but they have now they're now saying that they're going to take her to jail and put her in prison. So this is a terribly sad story. She's 75 years old. You know, the reality is this: there are many different causes and activists. You think about the Black Lives Matter movement as an example, and district attorneys, prosecutors, they can choose which cases to target, you know, which cases to pick and which people to go after. The Department of Justice, you know, it's always a question: who are we going to go after? Who are we going to, and how are we going to enforce these laws? What level of penalty are we going to bring down on these different people? In this case, they have chosen pro-lifers, particularly elderly pro-lifers like Paulette Harlow, to bring the full brunt of the law against, using the FACE Act to throw them in jail. And unfortunately, Paulette is not the first person that this has happened to. We've talked about others on the show. We actually had a friend of Lauren Handy, who's a young woman who's been thrown into jail for her work, Kristen Turner, talk about Lauren and her beautiful work to try to save lives and try to protect women and try to protect children. But there are now several different pro-lifers in federal prison after being found guilty of committing felonies violating the FACE Act. So I talked about this in previous episodes, but what I want to say here is this. The reality is there are protests. The American tradition of protest is one that has a long history, right? And protest is essential to fighting causes and fighting for, especially against injustices. Abortion's legal in this country. Killing babies is legal in this country. It should not be legal. This is the greatest human rights abuse we are seeing in any nation, in any part of the world, is killing babies before they're born and they have a chance to even protect themselves, right? It's happening thousands of times a day, almost 1 million times, or depending on the year, over 1 million times a year. Horrific, right? We should have fierce, of course, peaceful, but passionate protest against this. That's what these people have chosen to do, like Paulette Harlow, in going into abortion clinics and peacefully saying, I'm not going to leave until you stop your operations today. Now, pro-Palestine protests today, BLM protests, many of these protesters are very disruptive. They're disrupting the normal course of activity of the school institution or maybe the police department that they're protesting, and they're disrupting the normal course of activity happening. That's the job of the protester in order to create change, in order to force a conversation, in order to get their cause in front of people's eyes. And that's what these pro-lifers did. What was their problem, though? They chose an abortion clinic as their site of protest. They didn't choose a police department. They didn't choose Yale University. They chose an abortion clinic. And the Department of Justice is not going after, BLM protesters. They're not going after pro-Palestine protesters. What they're throwing their weight against is pro-life protesters. This is not just a misdemeanor. They're calling it a felony. This is not just a slap on the wrist or do some community service. This is, I'm going to throw you in federal prison, right? I'm saying all of this because I think it's important to make these distinctions, to show these distinctions, that this is another form of protest. Yes, there are laws against going into an abortion clinic and blocking access, but there's also laws against setting fire around a police department or laws against blocking access at a university for Jewish students to walk through on a certain part of campus. Are we holding people to the same standard and holding them accountable in the same way with other causes as we are with the pro-life cause? And the brutal truth is this: no, the Department of Justice is weaponizing the law against pro-lifers because they do not like pro-lifers and because they want to protect abortionists. That is the reality. And anyone telling you otherwise is telling you something and not telling you the truth. The reality is it is weaponized against pro-lifers. That is the problem here. The biggest problem is abortion to begin with, and I want to applaud those that are willing to protest and put even their freedom at risk in order to escalate this issue in front of other people and get other people to pay attention and to save some lives. And they do it peacefully, of course, always peacefully, and that's what they've done. But this is unjust, the way that the Department of Justice has been targeting these pro-lifers. So what can you do? Spread awareness is one key thing that you can do. Make sure that people know what is happening. There are different organizations that are representing these people in court, like the Thomas More Society, to protect them legally. And so certainly support those organizations. We continue to report on it over at Live Action. You can continue to partner with Live Action, but people need to know about this unjust persecution of pro-lifers, and we need to speak out against it. All right, Louisiana Public Schools has done something pretty controversial. It's making headline news right now. But before we go into that, I want to thank our sponsor, EveryLife. EveryLife.com, you hear me talk about them a lot on the show. This is America's fastest growing diaper company and America's only pro-life diaper company. They make best-in-class products for your little one or your loved one's little one, and they have a subscription service. You can get it delivered right to your door, and you get a great discount on that. But what I love about EveryLife.com is they use best-in-class materials for your little one, but they're also a pro-life company. Unfortunately, like Huggies and Pampers are owned by these conglomerates that are pro-abortion, that are supporting Planned Parenthood. Isn't that horrific? That when you're buying diapers and wipes, you're at the store, you're buying diapers and wipes from Huggies or Pampers, you're supporting indirectly Planned Parenthood. Is there a way to not do that? Of course there's a way to not do that, and that's by supporting and being a part of the EveryLife.com family. So if you go to EveryLife.com today and you order diapers and wipes for a loved one or your little one, you can use the code Lila at checkout for 10% off your order. That's EveryLife.com. You can use the code Lila at checkout for 10% off your order. All right, I'm going to take a quick look at the chat before I go over here to the story about Louisiana and the 10 Commandments. Diego is saying NBA is a waste of time. Yeah, I mean, I'm not, as I said earlier on the show, I do not personally, I've been to some basketball games. It's not like I think it's a terrible thing. It's fun, right? Some people love that. And I think sports can be great. But I'm a big fan of Coach Mazzulla. So I will not stop fangirling Coach Mazzulla and the stuff that he says, because it's great. Carissa is saying, I hope there's explanation for students with medical problems who need their smartphones to monitor medical issues. That is my problem. Great point, Carissa, and I agree. I think that any sort of policy like that, a blanket policy, should have exceptions for special cases. And if there's some medical reason to have the smartphone, then I can definitely see that being an important exception for the LA school district to make. All right. Melissa's agreeing and saying, good point, Carissa. Yes, I think as with any public policy, there needs to be exceptions depending on what's happening with the policy, who's affected by it. Always, that's the key. Melissa also says low trust. That's the problem. Absolutely. Yes. Our society is increasingly low trust when we fail to have shared values that we live together around, that we live these values. And so what's the solution to a low trust society is by building communities that are high trust, that share values, that are generous, that are law abiding, that are focused on raising children in truth and with love, and focused on fidelity and high commitment. That is always going to be the solution. That's why I'm really hopeful, by the way, with all the chaos in our society, with all of the confusion. I think the long game that a lot of us are playing about building high trust societies, raising our children, building strong marriages, I mean, that's the long game, right? And that's going to be the future of this country a decade or two from now. Okay, Louisiana and the 10 Commandments in public schools. You guys might be surprised by my take on this. I don't know. But, well, here's a story, first of all, for those that haven't seen this. Louisiana has become the first state to require that the 10 Commandments be displayed in every public school classroom. This is the latest move from a GOP-dominated legislature that's pushing a conservative agenda under a new governor. So that's the Associated Press's take on what's happening in Louisiana. Of course, it's a GOP-dominated legislator pushing a conservative agenda. Okay, what are they requiring? They're requiring a poster-sized image of the display of the 10 Commandments in large, easily readable font to be posted in every public school classroom. And the justification for this, they're saying, is that this was a prominent part of American public education for almost 3 centuries, to know the 10 Commandments. Okay. Another important point here is that the Supreme Court actually ruled against this in the past. So in 1980, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that a similar law in Kentucky was unconstitutional because Congress can make no law respecting an establishment of religion. So you guys are probably familiar with that phrase. You cannot have any law that is respecting an establishment of religion. You can't have a state-established religion in the United States. We are not a theocracy. The United States is not a theocracy. The majority of our population is Christian. We share many Christian values, as we should, and our Constitution has principles of truth that are found in our faith and that I think originate from God, who's the ultimate lawgiver. But our Constitution is not a biblical document. It is a secular document. These are all facts. My take on this is this. First of all, the whole idea of public education is challenging, right? Because it entrusts children to the state to educate them. And children need formation. They need formation that includes a moral formation. And if the state cannot include any faith, then how can they do a full moral formation? Now, the reality is the school can do faith, teach faith. Teachers are allowed to bring their faith to some degree into the classroom. It's not like it's banned. It would be unconstitutional to ban the 10 Commandments from the classroom. It would be unconstitutional to ban the Bible or the faith of the teacher for them to share, maybe not say you have to have my faith, but, to pray, for example, to pray in the classroom. But the reality is it constitutional to be forcing the 10 Commandments to be put on the wall? Do I want the 10 Commandments on the wall of every classroom in America? Why not? I think they're great. I mean, yes, you shall not kill, you shall not commit adultery, you shall have no idols before God. I think these are wonderful principles. But the reality is we live in a society where not everyone is a Christian. And we've chosen to live in a society that is not a theocracy, but that is a constitutional republic. And so I can understand the Supreme Court's ruling on this, quite frankly. And I also would just look at Louisiana and say, what are they going for here? Are they going for really great moral and philosophical formation of their students? If that's the case, fantastic. But is the way to achieve that by mandating a poster on the wall? What's the best way to achieve a strong moral and philosophical foundation for your students? And what's the best thing that the public school can do for that? Maybe a course on ethics that is grounded in objective truth as opposed to craziness and relativism. I mean, that I'd get behind mandating a course like that where you don't have to believe the Bible to necessarily say, yeah, this is true. I mean, the divine revelation, you don't have to ascribe to divine revelation to say that this is true. You see, the 10 Commandments is divine revelation, right? God gave it to Moses to give to his people. But you can reason your way to the 10 Commandments without the 10 Commandments if you have a good foundation in philosophy and ethics to know that it's wrong to kill, it's wrong to rape, to know it's wrong to have an idol, to know that it's wrong to steal. You can do that without divine revelation. So I know we're getting a little philosophical here on the show. Sometimes we do that, but I think it's important to look here. Yes, the reaction I think of many people who are Christians or Catholics listening be like, yeah, 10 Commandments, of course. And I would say, yes, 10 Commandments are great, but is it right for the government to mandate it to be on the wall of every classroom? And what is the most important thing that we're going for here? More than a symbol of the 10 Commandments on the wall, we want good moral and philosophical foundation for our students. And there are things that are absolutely constitutional that we can do and we should be fighting for in the public school system. And we should want among private schools and homeschools for kids to have a good moral and philosophical foundation that, of course, includes the 10 Commandments. 10 Commandments, which can be many of these moral principles, which you can come to see whether you're a Christian or not, whether you've come to have the gift of faith or not. So that's my take on it, a little nuanced here. I get what Louisiana is trying to do. I will say Louisiana has been disappointing in recent past because of some of their other actions, like banning the right of parents to even sue IVF clinics for the mistreatment of their babies and ultimately neglecting to protect their embryos and killing their embryos. You guys heard me talk about this on the show before, but I mean, this has been an ongoing problem with IVF just being a complete, having no regulations, no standards, and the United States being this wild west of the IVF industry. And unfortunately, that's happening in places like Louisiana. And so you have this move where there's no basis for that to not protect a child. I mean, there's no basis in natural law. Our Constitution has the 14th Amendment that says equal protection should be given to all people, and that should include preborn humans as much as a born human. So I think that there's good and bad happening here. I think that the heart behind this, I can respect it, I can understand it, but I think the end game should be moral and philosophical foundation of students. Putting the 10 Commandments on the wall, it's a bit of a lightning rod to do that, right? What would be the long game that Louisiana should try to play here for their students? And I would encourage landing on a formation, a class of some kind for their students to really teach them moral lessons, to really teach them right from wrong and truth so that they can ascertain that regardless of their faith background, regardless of whether or not they believe that the Bible is the inspired word of God. I think that would be a much better long game to play to improve education for students. Does that include the 10 Commandments? It absolutely can and should, but there's a little more nuance there than, as I've said, than maybe is the immediate response that you may have when you hear the news. Remember, we are a constitutional republic, and the Bible is incredibly important, but our Constitution is not divine revelation, right? Our Constitution is the reasoned best shot of a lot of very smart men back in the day to figure out a form of government that was going to serve the human person and serve a society that was built on justice. And that's what the American project is. All right, guys, I'm going to check the chat out here one more time. I also need to thank our sponsor, 7 Weeks Coffee, which is our last sponsor to thank in this episode. And they are what I drink every morning. I love 7 Weeks Coffee until I run out and I need to order more. But 7weekscoffee.com is America's pro-life coffee company. It's gourmet, delicious coffee that's delivered right to your door. And it's small batch, is ethically sourced. I love 7weekscoffee.com because they donate 10% of all of their proceeds, not just their profits, back to the pro-life movement. So they're a passionately pro-life company. Why buy coffee from anywhere else when you could buy from a pro-life company that has a best-in-class product that's also donating 10% of their profits back to the pro-life movement? I think they've donated now over $300,000 to pro-life pregnancy resource centers. So check out 7weekscoffee.com today. You can use the code Lila at checkout to get up to 25% off your first order if you join their Heartbeat Club, where you get subscribed to 7 Weeks Coffee and you get their coffee in every single month. That's 7weekscoffee.com and use the code Lila at checkout. All right, guys, we are going to go over to locals in a minute, which is at the link in the bio. I think you guys should be able to see that. And we're going to do a special session where I'm going to talk about back to social media, some tips that I have for social media usage and phone usage. I'm going to check out the chat here one more time. Thank you guys for joining over on YouTube. It's great to have you guys on here. Hello, Sips with Sarah. I love your name, Sips with Sarah. Junipero Sarah is one of my favorite saints here in Southern California. He was very instrumental in creating the missions up and down the state, these beautiful historic missions that we have. Thanks for joining Sips with Sarah. Thanks for joining Gavin. Thanks for joining everybody over at YouTube. We will see you next week. We're going to be doing it live next week. And I hope to see some of you guys over at Locals. So check out the link in the bio. Thanks so much for joining, and we'll see you guys next time.